week 12 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few tight ends I will bench this week. The first guy, Jared Cook of the Los Angeles Chargers. So Jared Cook, I've said a lot this season to drop him or bench him because he's been inconsistent, and the Chargers right now, he's the fourth option on that offense behind Eckler, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams. So the last few games here for Cook: Week 9 at Philly, 4 catches, 48 yards, and a 2-point conversion. Week 10 versus the Vikings, a catch for 10 yards. And Week 11 versus the Steelers, 3 catches, 28 yards. So right here, tough matchup for Cook as well at the Denver Broncos that give up the third least amount of fantasy points to tight ends on the season. And with the inconsistencies and him really not getting targeted much, there's no reason to really have Cook on your roster unless you start 2 tight ends or something, and obviously start him. So this week here with the tough matchup and a couple weeks in a row where he really hasn't done anything, he's an easy tight end to bench this week. The next tight end is Tyler Conklin of the Minnesota Vikings. So Tyler Conklin, he's been pretty decent this season for fantasy owners, but this week here, I'm just not going to start him because of the matchup for him is Conklin at the San Francisco 49ers that give up the 7th least amount of fantasy points to tight ends on the season. So the last few weeks here for Conklin: Week 9 at Baltimore, 5 catches, 45 yards. Week 10 at the Chargers, 3 catches, 11 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Week 11 versus the Packers, 3 catches, 35 yards. So right here, Kirk Cousins, he definitely spreads the football around with a lot of good weapons in this offense with Thielen, Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, and Conklin. But this week here with the tough matchup and Cousins struggles on the road, I think in this one we're not going to see much from Conklin. I could be wrong for sure here, but just by the track record of how things have been going this season, I think Conklin's only maybe going to get 6 to 8 fantasy points, and he's a tight end I will bench this week. And the third and final tight end I will bench is Hunter Henry of the New England Patriots. Henry here, he's been a touchdown-dependent tight end on the season, and last week where he didn't get a touchdown, we saw the mediocre game, 2 catches for 25 yards, and this week he's got a tough matchup on paper versus the Tennessee Titans that give up the 5th least amount of fantasy points to tight ends on the season. So the last few games here for Henry: Week 9 at the Panthers, 2 catches, 19 yards, and a touchdown. Week 10 versus Cleveland, 4 catches, 37 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Week 11 at Atlanta, like I mentioned, 2 catches for 25 yards. So right here, tough matchup for Henry, touchdown-dependent tight end. And the most he's going to get yardage-wise, it seems like, is 40 or 50 yards. So that's not going to be great production, in my opinion. You got to bank on him to get a touchdown this week. So that's a few tight ends I would bench here for Week 12 of the fantasy football season.